just to give a rundown, as you guys know, we have 5 men that were acquitted in the Fednapping hoax. We also have 5 men currently incarcerated, 2 in Supermax prison, 3 men are in federal BOP facilities across the country, although they were only charged with state charges in Michigan for providing material support. On the eve of their appeals, they were transferred to different facilities across the country, the federal facilities, and the government still hasn't said why they did that.
Well,
right now, hearings are being held about bringing those guys back to Michigan.
All right, now, the reason they do that, just so you know, is when you get transferred, they throw away all your shit. So if they have any paperwork, anything like that, it's very hard to move up to another location. So literally, they say, pack up your shit. You get like 1 bag of stuff. It's like flip-flops, shoes, and maybe some clothing.
Maybe a journal and a pencil.
If you're lucky, and everything else gets left behind.
Yeah.
And they're like, and they lie to you, and they go, "Oh, we'll send it to your new facility." That almost never fucking happens.
No, it doesn't happen. And like they, so they have done other things too since I started. I write to the guys, and I'm in very frequent communication with them. I'll put money on their commissary. I send them books. Sometimes I had to get the guys Michigan law books because they had no access to a Michigan law library to prepare for their appeals.
We'll put that on our site too,
because we have a guy that's been on our show who's in the system right now, and I put money on his commissary, and I talk to him about 2 or 3 times a month.
Yeah, I just think it's insane that they can do this on the eve of their appeals, that they can move these guys across the country like this. And then they do things like they say, oh, now we're going to, after I sent the guys books, they go, now we're instituting a 5-book policy. So you're only allowed to have 5 books now. And then they take the rest of their books. Why are they doing that? Why are they taking their books from the prisoners?
Here's the problem. You're thinking as a rational, normal, and kind-hearted person. What you're dealing with is Bolsheviks. They love to psychologically abuse people. They revel in it. These guys are being absolutely psychologically abused in whatever system that they're in right now.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And it is an institutionalized process. Pop and I have both been through little micro versions of it. When we were in the military, we had to go through SEER, the Survival, Escape, Resistance, Evasion course, where they treat you like a POW. These guys are living that way.
Well,
yeah, exactly.
Year 1 and 2.
They also told them they were going to take their legal documents and that they were going to be kept in a locked closet, and that if the guys wanted access to their legal documents, they were going to have to ask a prison official to go get it, but that they weren't allowed to keep their legal documents in their cells.
That is absolutely okay.
This is disgusting that this is happening.
This is what's happening. Okay, they do not want these people to interact with the outside world.
Yes,
they know there's going to be a lot of backlash. So they're making up these bullshit rules. They're putting up obstacles. They're moving people around like 3-shell Monty. All over the country. Now, there's going to need to be a legal team that's going to need to step in on behalf of these prisoners and start filing, lawsuits with the federal government, and probably, try to get a judge to go on board and say, yeah, let's move these guys into one area, or those stupid rules need to go away, because they deserve their right to.
Why is Judge Wilson, for example, right now, Judge Wilson, who oversaw the first state case against Joe Morrison, Pete Musico, and Paul Bellar in Jackson County, where all 3 of those guys were convicted in less than 4 hours. But anyways, that's besides the point. Judge Wilson was a judge there. Why is he the judge now? They're appealing his rulings. Why is he the judge of the appeals process? I'm not understanding why.
That is insane.
This is happening.
He must recuse.
That's right.
Well, that's what I don't get. I don't understand the Michigan process or how this works, but they were telling Paul he had to exhaust something called the court of claims or something. Do you know what this is?
There's
what
a
is
process that you go through. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're saying he has to go through this process through this court of claims, and they're having Judge Wilson, who was the one over. He's appealing Judge Wilson's rulings. Why is he doing that to Judge Wilson here? None of this makes sense to me.
Radix,
Judge Wilson also.
If you have that part written down about having to appeal the claims, whatever that was,
court of claims.
Send that over to me, and I have access to like Lexus.
All right,
all that good stuff.
The guy that we have that's in prison right now. All right, he actually has a job working in the law library now. There's no restrictions on him typing up his appeals or whatever he has to do.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, he's doing literally. The dude is a school trained engineer who worked in the field for about a decade. And he spent 5 years in Wayne County without a trial. And while he was in there, he said, all right, he went to the law library, he read all the books, he fills out all his own paperwork. I mean, in all reality, he could probably get out of there and go to law school at this time.
Right.
He has over half a decade worth of experience.
Wow.
This brings up a glaring point. This guy's in for a felony. The Whitmer's snatch debacle guys that I know of committed no violent acts at all.
None.
They do not have any of the privileges that this guy has, and they committed lesser crimes overall.
It's so gross. Like Adam and Barry right now are in Florence Supermax. Adam had zero criminal record before the FBI framed him as the ringleader in this. And he could be there for 16 years. Barry could be there for 19 and a half years. Barry is and Barry is a 50-year-old truck driver from Delaware, father of 3. He's got little girls who are at the age right now where they need their father. And it's really disturbing. You know, when they first, when I was interviewing them, right after they'd been convicted in their retrial, because the first federal trial ended, as you guys know, with 0 convictions for the government. Brandon and Daniel were acquitted. So Adam and Barry, they had to retry them separately, just the 2 of them. So they retried them. And this was after their conviction in the retrial. They were convicted after the jury initially had a mistrial on them in the first trial. In the retrial, which went very horribly, as you know, and that's all being appealed, they were convicted. So I'm interviewing them after their conviction in the retrial, prior to their sentencing. Okay. And we're doing what I call the prison interviews for the documentary, which you'll see in there when it's finished and it comes out.
Here, Christine. All right. Here's another dirty trick that happens with alphabet agencies when they put people in Supermax. They tamper with the paperwork to make it look like the individual's involved in some sex kind of shit, because that is very frowned upon.
That's disgusting.
Yes. No, it will get you killed.
It'll get you killed.
There is a guy in California. There's a lifer in California who has killed 3 pedophiles already, and he says, any more that you send in here, I'll kill.
That's right.
That does happen. And I mean, I'm just saying
that I had an army command.
No, but I know what you're saying. I know what you mean.
I don't have any proof that they've done that to these guys.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't put it past them. It's just
they do dirty tricks.
I think you missed what I said there. I had an army command try to do that to me in 2004.
Yep.
Oh wow. Really?
Yeah. Oh. Because I went after a brigade. I went after a corrupt brigade command.
Really? Oh wow.
Different ways. I lost a top secret security clearance because of what they did to me.
You know, I think they did that sort of to Joshua Schulte, the alleged Vault 7 whistleblower from the CIA to WikiLeaks that leads all of the CIA's hacking arsenal. They charged him with basically like CME. And it was because he ran a server very similar to kind of like an image board type. There's like a Wild Wild West, like libertarian forum type thing. And there were a lot of people that posted things that were questionable, right? I don't know what the details of it was, but it was not something he himself had posted or that I know was even aware of. They charged him with like child pornography, basically.
They can send guys
and
to go seed that stuff. If
I thought, what if they planted that? Exactly. Like he had this open forum, and I just don't, I feel like that guy got railroaded with something like that, because initially I don't think they had enough when they raided him and, were charging him with it. I think they used that as like an additional charge, but that's just a theory. I don't know that for sure. All I know
I'm
is
sitting here as a former spook telling you that, yes, you could do that kind of stuff. We had a guy we just called him the Carp. And the Carp went in with us into a particular country, sat down at the back of the warehouse that we were setting up in. A couple of minutes later, walks over, hands us all cell phones. He had hacked that country's cell phone network and given us all cell phone numbers with fake names.
Wow.
And he did it in about 10 minutes.
That's crazy. Yeah. So and look, what we learned from Joshua Schulte too was like that the CIA can put false attributions. They leave like Russian or Iranian or Chinese fingerprints to make it look like something was a Russian hack, hello, ding, ding, 2016 DNC. But anyways, I think he got railroaded like that. But so the guys were in Nuevo County when I had been interviewing them and talking to them. And I asked them, we knew their sentencing was coming up and we were doing the interviews and whatnot. Right before Barry's sentencing, I said, is there any kind of message you want me to get out? This is right before your sentencing. I have a small platform, but I'll do my best. So he said, yes. I published like a 7-minute statement from him. And this was like at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. The next morning at 9 o'clock in the morning at his sentencing, the prosecutor Nils Kessler is quoting Barry from this interview the night before that I put out on my tiny little YouTube channel to call Barry unrepentant and completely radicalized because he, quote, wasn't taking responsibility for the FBI framing and entrapping him. Then he came up with this thing where he called Barry, and we never heard this before throughout the first or second trial at that point. He calls him the spiritual leader of the kidnapping that didn't happen, of this like thing that they called a conspiracy, which wasn't actually a conspiracy except on the part of the government. So he said that Barry was like the blind sheik. When he called him the spiritual leader, he said he was like the blind sheik. And I'm like, Barry?
What that
Delaware,
is? I know
who
what
wears
that is.
That's that.
Yeah.
No. I know what's
like,
going on here. We've run into these guys before. Hang on a second, Radix. The guy making the blind sheik reference, was he an FBI guy?
No, that's the prosecutor, Nils Kessler. He said that Barry, at his sentencing, that he said Barry was the spiritual leader of this fake conspiracy and that he was like the blind sheik. And he also said that when Barry talked about the Constitution and the founding fathers, which are a myth, and I'm like, wait a second. This prosecutor's taken an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. He's calling it a myth. Barry's called a terrorist because he has "We the People" tattooed on his arm, but it's right there in the courthouse where this kangaroo court is happening. And it says it right there. So Barry's a terrorist for having "We the People" tattooed on him. But in the courtroom where they're saying this, they have "We the People" displayed right there with the Constitution. And the prosecutor is calling the founding fathers like a myth. And I'm like, what is going on? They're saying when Barry talked about wanting to restore the Constitution, that this was like ISIS wanting to restore the caliphate. And I'm like, what are they talking about? Barry was trying to start a constitutional school. That was his idea. That was what he was talking about in these meetings. How is this ISIS and the caliphate? But this is what they said. So after their sentencing, and that was when they sentenced him to 19 and a half years, which was strange because prior to that, they had focused on Adam Fox, who was the homeless man living in the basement of the back shack that they called the ringleader. They gave him 16 years the day before, and then they gave Barry more time and called him the spiritual leader. I think that that was retribution because Barry was participating more in the documentary than any of the other guys. So, needless to say, Adam and Barry are sentenced. They're currently at Newaygo County, and usually there's a couple weeks right before sentencing to when you're transferred out to the facility you're going to end up in. It usually is about 2.5 weeks. That day, after their sentencing, I get statements from them for the Weaponization Committee. I publish Barry's statement, which is a 4-minute long video, which you can see. It's up on my YouTube channel, where he basically is reading a written statement he wrote to Jim Jordan, to the Weaponization Committee, asking them to investigate the FBI's actions in this case. Well, I put that out. The next day, Adam and Barry are moved from Newaygo County to Supermax facilities across the country. Adam is sent to Florence. Barry is sent to Terre Haute. When Barry gets to Terre Haute, they start saying, you're going to be going into the CMU, which is the Communications Management Unit, which is something that they had in these Supermaxes, which was for like Islamic terrorists that were created in the wake of 9/11. The CMU was to have somebody monitoring if somebody was speaking like an Arabic, so they could listen to make sure that like some terrorist wasn't ordering some act of terror in like another language. That's why you would have somebody in the Communications Management Unit. Why does 50-year-old Barry from Delaware need to be put in there?
Radix, if you've got a spare day when you come up, I will very quietly introduce you to one of the former NCOICs of Camp X-Ray at Gitmo. He's here too.
Nice.
Anyway, these guys, the way that they're being handled, this again is stock Bolshevism. These people know that they've been caught out. They know that everybody knows that they're lying. They know, and I'm talking about the federal government and the government of the state of Michigan. I will bet you that the Southfield boys, as we call them, which is the feds here, and Nestle's office are collaborating and looking at all of this stuff and making these decisions as split second as they are that you just described right there. There's a whole lot of corruption in this state that a lot of people doesn't even know exist. And what you did was kick the hornet's nest.
Oh, what also happened right after when the guys were moved to Supermax facilities, right after I published their statements for Weaponization Committee, my house was raided twice.
Nice.
Well, it was, quote, swatted, but we all know who did it. Okay, let's be real.
What is the Weaponization Committee?
I was about to ask exactly that question.
The Weaponization Committee, there's a very long name for it. It's like Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government. It is a committee set up by Jim Jordan and several other conservative representatives who were supposed to be investigating the weaponization of the federal government against the American people. Now, the committees initially said it was going to be like the Church Committee 2.0, right? We're going to get to the bottom of weaponization of these intelligence agencies, rogue intelligence agencies. It's done nothing. It's given us the freaking Twitter files and Radix, like Hunter Biden nonsense.
Are you able to see our monitors? Are you able to see us?
So I can see you guys. I don't know if I can see your screen.
That's fine. That's all you need to see. You can see me with green background, right?
Yes.
So there's a tradition we have on this show when somebody makes a bunch of statements about an organization that you have just made. This is the bullshit flag. That's for the Weaponization Committee.
Yeah.
It is a pacifier. It is absolutely a
pacifier. They've not investigated this case at all. I've tried numerous ways to get information to the committee, to reach out to them, to urge them to investigate this case, not only publishing the statements of the guys themselves, but their families, and they haven't done anything. Nobody cares, frankly, about Hunter Biden. Like, we all know the guys, okay? We would like to have actual investigations into like the FBI, I don't know, manufacturing a according to them, the greatest domestic terrorism case in a generation.
That's
so
nonsense.
Yeah.
One of our viewers over on Rumble, Crusader Knight, just threw up the judiciary.house.gov subcommittees committee-judiciary-118th Congress Select Subcommittee Weaponizations Federal. So the link is over there on Rumble. It just went up a minute ago. If you want to run over and grab that, those of you who are listening, that goes to the link that Radix here is talking about.
Yeah, that's the committee. You can see all of the non-things they've done. They did do one good thing. You know, they brought in some of the FBI whistleblowers and they had like a hearing on that so they could grift and ask for donations based off their little sound bites. And that's what they do, okay? Like, that's what these committees do. That's literally the substance of what it amounts to, is them holding a pretense of a hearing where they make statements, and they'll bring people in, they'll grill them for sound bites, and then there's zero follow-up. Nobody's no recommendations for prosecution follow up with this stuff. It's literally just
It's
like TV. It's just like Judge Judy or some shit, where it's like not a real courtroom. Like, there's nothing real happening.
Judge Judy gets more done. That judgment for $100 the other day, that was a top-notch call. These guys do less.
That's actually a good point, but it's a production, okay? That's put on specifically so these representatives can have their 3-minute long soundbite where they, you know, took somebody at the FBI to task, but that like nothing actually happens.
It's
nobody
Mel Brooks,
really.
the producers. They do a little Nazi song and dance number. Everybody claps. And they go on.
Yeah, that's what happens, and so I've attended some of these hearings. I was there in person at the FBI whistleblower hearing. I have attended 2 different Bureau of Prison oversight hearings. I was there when the director, Colette Peters, was testifying next to Inspector General Horowitz, where they gave their lies about the Bureau of Prison and their lies about how they were working to reform the BOP. We know they just shut down FCI Dublin, that was dubbed the Rape Club in California, because a federal judge who is involved in a class action lawsuit against that facility brought in a special master and appointed a special master that was going to oversee reforms to the facility. And it looks like what the BOP decided to do instead was to shut down the facility to prevent actual oversight of an outside independent special master. And I heard from reports, and I've actually talked to somebody who was incarcerated, a January 6er who was there literally for misdemeanors. She herself wasn't sexually assaulted, but she knew women who were. And I've talked to her, and some of these women have said that the staff there at the prison were shredding documents. No, the FBI also, the FBI raided FCI Dublin. Yeah. Nothing is going to come of that. That is them coming in there to destroy evidence like they did with Jeffrey Epstein and his island. You know, that's what's happening. And
you need to keep an eye on your mailbox for a postcard from one H. Clinton.
No!
If you see that postcard, run. Okay.
But I've attended these oversight hearings and I see how nothing actually happens. And nobody at that oversight hearing, the last one with Director Peters there, you know, with Horowitz, not one person asked about the Whitmer guys and what's been happening to them while their appeals are ongoing and how the BOP has interfered in their ability to do so. For example, the guys with the state charges in Michigan who were sent to federal facilities across the country are unable to meet with their lawyers. Their lawyers are public defenders from Michigan. They're not going to drive, to West Virginia.
Overworked, okay?
Exactly. They're not driving the 5 hours to West Virginia to deal with this shit. So they're not visiting them. They have no access to a Michigan law library, these guys. So I'm sending them law books. They have no access to their transcripts, which they need to prepare for their appeals. And They've had no ability to meaningfully confer with their lawyers. These guys, some of them haven't even talked to their lawyers, or they've talked to them once, like their appeals lawyers, one fucking time. And I am more informed on the case than some of the lawyers. That is concerning to me. It's bizarre.
That's concerning, period. Don't even pretend that is concerning.
They are, Ambrose is Paul Beller's lawyer. Okay. He's a court appointed lawyer from Michigan. He has made a filing talking about his legal mail to Paul being sent back, returned to sender from the BOP. And they claim they don't do that because, well, I don't want to get into that particular story. I was going to get into that, has to be saved for the documentary, but they claim they don't interfere in their appeals, but that they also don't have an obligation to help facilitate them, essentially. So they say at the prison they don't have to help these guys participate in the legal system, basically.
Well, there's no other way for them to participate in the legal system.
Well, there's a difference between...
Exactly. Like, if they can't talk to their lawyers legal mail is being returned, so these guys aren't getting their transcripts to prepare for their appeals, but they're not getting their appeals pushed back, to give them the opportunity to do this. And also, when Ambrose calls, when the lawyers are calling and they're supposed to have attorney-client privilege phone calls, the call is being monitored by a quote-unquote third party. Now, this is in court filings from Paul's case, where his lawyer is saying, my mail is being returned, my privileged phone calls are being monitored by a third party. We all know who that is. It's the FBI. And these lawyers are being surveilled and monitored by the FBI. You think they're going to be interested in really pursuing them? The people who they know are monitoring them, they're terrified of the feds. These lawyers are scared, and so they don't do anything. They're pretty much useless because they're all kind of cowardly, in my opinion.
No, yeah, that's actually...
And too, that there are things they could be doing where they could be pursuing things further about bringing the guys back so they can participate in their appeals. It's just, we have a hearing set up and we have a conversation about why the government moved them in the first place. Still haven't gotten an answer. No answer about when they're going to come back. Oh, now they're going to pursue getting a writ. Oh, so they're going to now try to force them to comply. How's that going to go? They're going to just get thrown in the hole when they get to Michigan? Am I going to still be able to contact them? It's just all very stressful.
So
and these people are bad, and they are purposefully...
A lot of FBI cases, Radix, and all of these things is stock FBI tactics. They rely heavily on intimidation. They love to...
Yeah, this is like COINTELPRO stuff.
Yes, it is. That's exactly what it is, actually. When they're doing this, if they cannot keep up that facade, if they go up against somebody or some bodies who are persistent and keep going and keep pushing through, it does eventually break, because they can only play the same audio track so many times, if you know what I mean. You see it in movies. The best episode is, or the best example of it was in True Lies, where Schwarzenegger... Have you seen True Lies?
Yeah, I've seen it.
I'm sure I have.
Where Arnold Schwarzenegger has the tape recorder and he's playing the guy's voice and trying to get his wife to dance.
Yeah.
And he accidentally gets stuck. That's what happens with the FBI. They can only play their audio track so many times before it gets stuck and people see it. They're counting on everybody folding and everybody capitulating before that happens, because they know that what they're doing is illegal.
Yeah, I think that's true. And, I don't think they ever thought that this case was even going to go to trial. I think they thought that these guys were working class men from Michigan who were mostly indigent. I mean, the guy they framed as a ringleader was homeless and living in the basement of the vac shack. I think they thought they could come at them and say, you're facing life in prison and we have a 99% conviction rate. and that these guys would take, their plea deals and be scared and not fight them, because that's usually
exactly
what happens. They come in hard and heavy. They do these like tactical paramilitary raids of your house. They terrify, they do shock and awe, and they make you think that you don't have a chance fighting them in the legal system. The deck is stacked against you. You better take a plea deal. And even these public defenders, they have such a heavy caseload that they also will tell people, they'll encourage them to fucking plead guilty to something they didn't do so they can have less paperwork to deal with and get rid of it.
That's very common. That's very common.
Yeah, it's the Glenn Larson cows going to slaughter thing where the cows have shoot A and shoot B, but both go to the slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the illusion of choice.
Oh, 100%. Moreover, the government is running the entire fucking thing. Like from the whole, so they're doing the investigation, and they're creating the whole case. They they take over the militia group. They create fake militia groups. They're calling in the meetings, the FTXs. They're paying for things. Like the FBI is leading that whole thing. Then after they arrest these guys, the FBI takes lead in prosecuting them. I don't know if you guys know this. I'm sure you guys do. I don't know if your audience does. The FBI actually sits there at the table with the prosecutor, and they are the ones that handle the evidence. Hell, during the last trial, the fourth trial in this case, the second state case, they had Agent Harris putting everybody's exhibits up. He's literally hitting the thing and controlling the projector. And it's like, okay, so the FBI is the ones that try your case. They're sitting there next to the prosecutors. Also, the courts are favorable to the government. Most of these judges were prosecutors. They think and talk and act like federal prosecutors. They're so deferential to the prosecution and to the government, who has every benefit of the doubt, the way that they set everything up. They also pick your jury pool, and then you get to whittle it down. I'm sorry, I don't believe that this is a fair process. I think in the modern age, they choose sort of the pool that they want. Then it gets whittled down from there. So the government gets to pick your jury, and then your public defender, which the government gives you, works with the government prosecutor to, quote, whittle it down. And we're told this is now a fair process and a jury, quote, of your peers. And the entire thing's a kangaroo court and process. The judge will then decline all substantive defense motions and grant just a few to make it look like he's being fair, but he denies most of them, the most important ones, and the entire process is a scam.
Watch Grunt Speak live every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And if you want to join Pop for Supporter Sundays, go to redonkulous.com/donate and make a monthly pledge. A link is in the Meat Gazer box.